Bulls Nation, today is one of the final episodes of Chicago Bulls Weekly. This episode could very well be the last episode of Chicago Bulls Weekly. And in the end, it's been a very fun ride, filled with ups, filled with downs, filled with controversies, filled with positives, big news, small news, everything of the sorts. This season has been a whirlwind for the Chicago Bulls. And in the end, it's not over just yet, and maybe we still have a long time to come. But in the end, this is the end game for the Chicago Bulls. It's either we go in, we go all out, and we show win in the play-in tournament, or we fall away and we end our season early this year. But without further ado, if this is the last episode of Chicago Bulls Weekly that I'm going to make, then let's make it a fun one. Let's talk about the Chicago Bulls in this video. Let's do it. What's up, everybody? It's the Aidan Sports Show, and welcome back to another video. Today, we've got a Chicago Bulls Weekly episode, potentially the final episode of Chicago Bulls Weekly, and in the end, it's been a very positive ride, very negative ride. There are so many things that's been happening in my mind just thinking about this season for the Chicago Bulls, and definitely one of the more memorable seasons for me, because this is obviously the first season, full season, I should say, where I've been covering every game on YouTube this year, and it's been a very up and down ride, and in the end there has been some great ups and some great downs, but we'll get all into that at another video when, again, if the season does end, we will be making more videos for the Chicago Bulls after this season, so don't need to worry about that. But before we get started on this Chicago Bulls Weekly episode, please like and subscribe to the Aidan Sports Show YouTube channel, turn notifications on, and let me know in the comments below your thoughts about the Chicago Bulls, the end game for the Chicago Bulls. We go in or we go home. It's as simple as that. Do we want to play in tournament, or do we want to go home? In the end, we've made it very, very, very hard on ourselves, and we have some very difficult games coming up. But the Chicago Bulls is absolutely a necessity to win these games, and also have to keep the faith alive that the Pacers or the Wizards continue to lose their games. If one loss for the Chicago Bulls happens, I believe our season is pretty much dead and buried. So we cannot allow the Chicago Bulls to lose another game. And in the end, that's going to be easier said than done. Once again, I've already told you my stance. I still believe we will be 11th in the East as season comes, and I do believe our season will slowly begin to die out once these last 4 games have been played. So in the end, that's where my belief is. That's where my stance is for the Chicago Bulls. But thankfully, this last week, the previous week that we've just faced, has given us the chance. Our season is not dead yet because of the phenomenal week that we've had for the Chicago Bulls. So we have to talk about the previous week, and of course we have to talk about the upcoming games. So let's start off with the previous week for the Chicago Bulls. There were 4 games played for the Chicago Bulls this week, and we've went 3-1. We played some very good basketball in this period, and again, we've had some luck with some injuries and all of that sorts, but this week has kept our season alive, even in the glimmer or the slight chance that we can make it further than leaving the season early. We can make that play-in tournament. We still have that glimmer of hope, because this week was great for the Chicago Bulls. The first game obviously was not particularly great, and again, this is one of those games where it was deja vu. The last week's games was every single game last week, or 2 weeks ago I should say now, was the exact same game. No Vucevic, no Zach LaVine, no scoring. And that was the Chicago Bulls motto for the majority of those games. But this previous week for the Chicago Bulls, that Philadelphia game where we lost 106-94 was a resemblance of what was the case 2 weeks ago as well. And this was the only negative game that the Chicago Bulls had throughout the entirety of the previous week. So this was the one where many people said our season would have ended. In the end, the Chicago Bulls have done well to win 3 in a row prior to that, after that. But this is a very bad loss for the Chicago Bulls in the end. And this is the game where Joel Embiid had 13 points and the Philadelphia 76ers still won the game. And that is something that I didn't like to see at all. I felt a little bit upset knowing that their star players didn't really show up to the table. show up to the plate, and once again they still managed to win the game, and that was the same case in the second game against them as well. The next game was against the Charlotte Hornets, and we've had very good games against the Charlotte Hornets. This is probably one of the better teams the Chicago Bulls have beaten the entirety of the season, and we've done so in pretty convincing fashion all three times. We won this game 120-99. The big men played well, and overall I believe this was the return of Zach LaVine as well, and the Chicago Bulls did a phenomenal job in this game. And again, this was the beginning of our win streak, and hopefully we can see more winning coming out of this win streak that we currently have. This was a very, very good start to that win streak. Then we move over to the next game against the Boston Celtics. I believe these two games were back-to-backs, and the Chicago Bulls did the exact same thing, and we beat the Boston Celtics 121-99. Very similar scoreline, very similar style of play, except this game for the Boston Celtics, Jaylen Brown did not play, and the Chicago Bulls took advantage of one of their best players not playing. And in the end, Jason Tatum struggled for them, but the Chicago Bulls did absolutely everything required of them to win this game here. And this was probably one of the bigger wins of the season. Both games where we've beaten the Boston Celtics have been in vital situations, and we've done so, and we've delivered against the Boston Celtics. Then the next game was against the Detroit Pistons. This was a game where it was absolutely essential to win. This was a trap game that we should not let get the better of us. And the Chicago Bulls was comfortable from the first quarter all the way to the fourth quarter as we beat the Detroit Pistons 108-96. And in the end, this was another win that could keep our season alive at the end of the day. Again, one loss could mean the end of our season, probably means the end of our season at this point. So any loss that we have in the next 4 games, if we do have a loss in the next 4 games, is going to be end of our season most likely. But thankfully, because of these 3 wins, we've kept our season alive, and this was a very strong week overall for the Chicago Bulls. With that being said, there are 3 awards that we usually give out for the Chicago Bulls: the Must Improve of the Week, the Sixth Man of the Week, and the Player of the Week. This could be, again, one of the last ones that I ever give out. I know we have 4 games left, and we're going to have to review those games here and there and give those awards at some other time. But if this is the last episode of Chicago Bulls Weekly, this could potentially be the last pieces of awards I give out for the Chicago Bulls. So we're going to have to make this one to remember, won't we? First off, let's go with the Must Improve. The Must Improve, again, as always, is a very difficult circumstance to try and determine who has been the worst player on this team over the course of many games. And it's not easy to give this award out. And again, it hasn't been easy all year to give this award out. And it goes to the level of the performer. And I just don't know. I find it so difficult, especially when we've won 3 games in a row and we've played very well in doing so. But if I had to pick someone, and this might be the wrong choice, but I'm going to pick him regardless because I think he's had very inconsistent games. I'm going to pick Larry Marketing. Larry Marketing had a game where he had 14 minutes played and he played well. There was a game where he played 20 minutes and he played well. But there has been 2 games this week where he's not played well. And that is something it's the common thing for Larry Marketing without this entirety of his career at most instances. Especially these last 2 years, I would say, for sure. So it's a bit tough to give it to Larry Marketing in this week, especially when we've won 3 games in a row. I don't think it's fair to put someone under the bus like that. So I'm not going to really say anything negative. I just think that he's had probably the most inconsistent week this week, hence the reason he is getting the Must Improve Player of the Week. Now moving on into the Sixth Man of the Week, the best bench player this week. Again, you got to give your recognition to the bench if you're a Chicago Bulls fan. This bench has been up and has been down. The bench against Detroit wasn't necessarily great, but the bench everywhere else against the Boston Celtics was pretty good. In the end, this bench has been very inconsistent, but I guess the one person I really think, and again, this could be the wrong answer, but I still believe, in my opinion, this guy deserves a lot of credit, is Tomas Satoransky. Now, in the end, Thaddeus Young is definitely a candidate for this award as well, but Thaddeus Young did start against the Detroit Pistons due to Daniel Tice being out, and Satoransky played all of his games off the bench, and I thought this week he played decently off of the bench for the Chicago Bulls. In the end, I rate Satoransky. I think he could be a good player for us next season, but again, I still think we need a little bit more in that point guard position. And I definitely think Satoransky, his future is not safe with the Chicago Bulls. I like him as a player. I think he's a top guy in many ways as a leader, mate, in a way for this team. But in the end, we're going to have to wait and see how that goes. The future of the Chicago Bulls. I will have to make a keep, wave, or trade video for the Chicago Bulls after the season ends. We've got a lot of creative stuff, hopefully, to talk about for the Chicago Bulls going forward. But he is definitely my sixth man of the week. And again, if there's anybody else that I have missed, please let me know in the comments below. And the player of the week, for me, this has been a player that's been getting it quite some time, and he's going to get it once again this week. Nikola Vucevic, the all-star center, the big man, has been consistently good for the Chicago Bulls. And again, this week is another example of that. I believe he missed the game against the Philadelphia 76ers. So that was the only game you could really say you could give it to somebody else. But outside of that, I really thought Nikola Vucevic was our best player. And again, he's been our best player for quite some time now. Obviously, Zach LaVine with his 11 games missed. He came into this, he had one bad game and two really good games. But again, the consistency factor for Zach LaVine was just not there in time for him to get a Player of the Week award out of me this week. So my Player of the Week goes to Nikola Vucevic. And now, the last 4 games of the season, the do-or-die time for the Chicago Bulls, the end game for the Chicago Bulls. The first game that we have out of these 4 games is against the Brooklyn Nets. Difficult game. Very difficult game. We have beaten the Brooklyn Nets before, but we beat the Brooklyn Nets with just Kyrie Irving. I don't know who's going to be playing for the Brooklyn Nets in this upcoming game. In the end, so many people take so many breaks on that team because in the end, they can afford to do so. They have such a good amount of talent in that team that people could take breaks off in the regular season and focus on the playoffs, and they'll be just fine. So we could capitalize on that. We could also, again, fall short to the Brooklyn Nets, which is probably the expected result. But if we want to keep our season alive even further, that is a must-win game. Then we've got the Toronto Raptors. I actually believe we're favorites to win this game. I don't think Toronto... we've beaten Toronto twice already this year. It's going to be difficult to beat a team 3 times in a row. We've rarely done it to teams. But again, if we're going to want to keep our season alive, we have to beat the Toronto Raptors. They're a team that are underneath us in the standings. They're a team that could potentially overtake us in the standings. So this is the area of time for the Chicago Bulls where we should and we have to beat the Toronto Raptors. And then the next game is once again after that game against the Brooklyn Nets. The same thing for this Brooklyn Nets team that we're versing tomorrow or earlier today, whatever your time zone is. The other game against the Brooklyn Nets, the same thing applies. I don't know who's playing for the Brooklyn Nets. They're a team that has so much talent, but there's also a team that can rest players very easily. So I don't know which Brooklyn Nets team we're going to face in that game either. But again, a crucial game at that. Then the last game is against the Milwaukee Bucks. We've had some terrible games this season, but 2 of our worst games, in my opinion, has come from the Milwaukee Bucks. I think that's fair to say. So that game is going to be very unlikely for us to win at the end of the day. Same with the Brooklyn Nets in the end. But that game I'm not looking forward to. And that happens to be the last game of the season. We only have 1 week left for our season. And again, we could go further in the play-in tournament, or we could very well be saying goodbye early. But the Chicago Bulls has 1 week left. It has been an incredible journey. It's been a very long time. In some ways, I forget how long it's been. I'm pretty sure the start of December is when I started doing these from game 1. Whew. Time flies, doesn't it? Anyway, the end of the season is coming upon us. We're going to have to wait and see what the Chicago Bulls are going to do. I know many people believe we can make the 10th seed. It is still very much possible. I've already said what I need to say about that. I'm not going to repeat myself again. But let me know in the comments below, where do you think the Bulls are going to finish if you're still up to this point in the video. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're new. Have a wonderful and safe day, all Bulls Nation. Hopefully you enjoy the end of the season for the Chicago Bulls, and hopefully you will get re-energized and ready for the next season. That's going to be quite some time away. But again, as we've seen already, or at least for me, time really flies when you're doing these YouTube videos. They really, really do. So hopefully we will see a positive end to the season, and hopefully we can see more positivity in the trade periods, the free agency, maybe even the draft. We shall wait and see what the Bulls are going to try to do in this off season. Take care and peace.